I thought I was just dusting an old family painting, but when it slipped from the wall, a hidden note fell out, one addressed to me, written before I was even born. I'd lived in my grandfather's old house for 6 months, sorting the belongings he left behind. He had been a quiet man, one of those people who spoke with nods and gentle smiles more than actual words. Most of his things were simple: books, faded clothes, postcards he never mailed. But the painting in the hallway, a sunset over a calm lake, had always felt different. He told me once, "That one's important, kiddo. Keep it close." I never understood why. That evening, I wiped the frame to remove a layer of dust. My hand accidentally bumped the corner, and the entire painting tilted. A thin piece of yellowed paper slipped out from the back, landing silently on the wooden floor. At first, I thought it was just a receipt or some old repair note, until I noticed the handwriting. Sharp, deliberate strokes. My grandfather's handwriting. And on the front: "For whoever finds this, and for the one who needs it most." My chest tightened. He had never been dramatic. Never poetic. Never the type to leave secret messages hidden behind artwork. So why this? Why something tucked away like a quiet whisper waiting for years? I hesitated before unfolding it. It felt intimate, like opening a door I wasn't sure I had permission to walk through. The paper trembled slightly in my hands, as though it held its own kind of breath. The first line made me sit down on the hallway floor. "If you're reading this, it means life has pushed you somewhere heavy." I froze. Because lately, life had been heavy. Too heavy. I'd been overwhelmed, trying to manage the house, my job, and the quiet loneliness that comes with losing the last elder of your family. How could he have known? The hallway felt still. Warm. Almost watchful. As I kept reading, I realized something unsettling, something that made me look up at the painting with new eyes. This wasn't just a note. It was the beginning of a message he had never spoken aloud, a message I suddenly needed more than I wanted to admit. I held the note as if it were something fragile, something alive. The edges were worn, the ink slightly faded, but the meaning felt sharp, like every word was carved with intention. My grandfather wasn't the type to talk about emotions. He'd been raised in a generation that believed silence was strength, that feelings were private matters you locked away behind polite smiles. So seeing his words spill so openly onto a page felt like witnessing a version of him I never knew existed. The note continued. "There will come a day when you'll feel lost. Not in the world, but in yourself. And I need you to know something before that day arrives." I read that part 5 times. Lost in myself. Yes, that described me more accurately than I wanted to admit. Ever since he passed, I'd been moving through my days on autopilot. Filling boxes. Making decisions. Pretending I understood what I was doing. But grief has a strange way of clouding even the simplest tasks. Some days I felt like I was living underwater, slow, heavy, disconnected. And yet this note, hidden behind a painting for who knows how many years, felt like a hand reaching out from the past, steadying me. I took a deep breath, hoping the next line would give me something: guidance, comfort, clarity. Anything. It said, "You might think you're alone. But loneliness is a trick the mind plays when the heart is tired." I leaned back against the wall. He had seen it. He had felt it. Maybe even lived it. Was this why he kept this painting? Why he hung it in the one hallway everyone walked through? Why he once told me it was important? Maybe he'd been waiting, silently, for the right eyes to find this message. He had never spoken much about his past, about struggles or heartbreaks he carried. But suddenly, through these written lines, I could feel the weight he'd once held. And maybe, the weight he suspected I would one day carry too. I continued reading, my fingers tightening on the page. If the world ever feels too loud, look for the quiet thing that calls you back. It's always there. It waits. It does not leave. The sentence sent a shiver through me. Quiet things. Steady things. The things we forget to notice when life gets overwhelming. He must have known I would need this reminder someday. I glanced up at the painting again, the quiet lake, the still water, the warm horizon. I'd walked past it thousands of times without a second thought. But tonight, it felt like it was watching me back. It felt like the first clue in a story he left behind, one I was only just beginning to understand. I sat there on the hallway floor longer than I meant to, the evening light drifting through the window and stretching shadows across the worn wooden boards. The house felt unusually still, almost as though it was pausing with me, listening as I inhaled each of my grandfather's words. The next lines on the note read, "When I was younger, I thought strength meant keeping everything inside. But silence can become its own kind of burden. I don't want that for you." Something tightened in my throat. He had never said anything like this aloud. Not once. Growing up, I thought he was simply reserved, maybe stoic by nature. But now it felt like I was reading a confession he never had the courage to speak while he was alive. I ran my thumb over the painted frame leaning beside me. The painting suddenly felt heavier than its physical weight, as though it had been guarding a part of him, his truth, his vulnerability. I continued. "There will be people who disappoint you. People who leave, even when they promised they wouldn't. But listen to me carefully, their leaving is not a verdict on your worth." I closed my eyes as those words sank in. It was impossible not to think of recent months, how friendships had faded when things got difficult, how messages went unanswered, how I'd convinced myself it must have been something wrong with me. How could he have known this struggle would be mine too? The next line was softer, almost like a whisper. "You are more than what others give you." For a moment, the heaviness in my chest loosened. Just a little. Just enough. I found myself looking at the brushstrokes on the painting, the soft oranges, the gentle blues, wondering why he chose a sunset instead of a sunrise. Maybe sunsets weren't endings to him. Maybe they were reminders to pause, to breathe, to reflect. The note continued. "If you ever doubt where you're going, stand still. The heart finds direction in stillness." Stillness. The one thing I had avoided lately. I realized then that I hadn't truly paused since he died. I'd been racing through tasks, burying myself in responsibilities, trying to outrun grief as if speed could protect me from feeling. But here he was, asking me to slow down, inviting me into quiet. I let my head rest against the wall, feeling the coolness of the plaster, the hum of the old house around me. And in that moment, I understood something. Maybe this note wasn't meant to change my life all at once. Maybe it was simply meant to change the way I saw my life. And for the first time in months, I felt the tiniest pull toward calm, like something inside me was finally exhaling. The house had grown dim as the sun slipped lower, the hallway now painted in soft amber shadows. I didn't bother turning on the lights. Something about the quiet darkness made the moment feel more intimate, as if I were sitting with my grandfather again, just the two of us, speaking in the only way we still could. My eyes returned to the next part of the note. "If you are reading this, then life has brought you to a crossroads. I know how hard it can be to choose the direction you cannot yet see." Crossroads. That was exactly where I felt stuck. Not moving forward, not willing to stay where I was, caught in the in-between. I breathed slowly and read on. "When you face moments like this, remember, fear is loud, but truth is quiet. Listen to the quiet part." The quiet part. He kept coming back to that theme. I realized then that his letter wasn't just advice. It was a map. A way of seeing the world through his eyes, through the wisdom life had carved into him. Another line followed, written more shakily than the rest. "You have a kindness that will feel like a burden at times. People may take it without giving anything back. Do not let that harden you." My throat tightened again. He had noticed. He had seen me more clearly than I ever realized. I remembered small moments, how he'd place a hand on my shoulder when I was younger, how he'd watch me help neighbors without complaint, how he'd say, "You care too much, kiddo," but with a soft pride in his voice. He had known my heart, even when I didn't. Then came a line that felt like it reached straight into the part of me I tried to hide. "You are allowed to step back. You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to be human." I let those words settle. All the pressure I'd been putting on myself. To keep the house running. To stay strong. To not break down. Suddenly felt unnecessary, like I'd been carrying weight he never intended me to bear. The next sentence made me sit up straighter. "There is something in this house that I left for you. Not money. Not instructions. Something better. You will know it when you see it." My heart thudded. Something else? Something purposely left behind? I glanced at the painting, then toward the dim hallway stretching into the house's deeper rooms. A quiet unease and curiosity mixed in my stomach. What had he hidden? And why leave it for me? The note ended abruptly at the bottom of the page, as if the story wasn't finished. I stared at the empty space, feeling the weight of everything unsaid. And then, for the first time since finding the note, I stood up. Because whatever he'd left, I needed to find it. I held the note carefully, as if the slightest movement might erase the words he had written. The last line echoed inside me. "There is something in this house that I left for you. You will know it when you see it." The house suddenly felt larger, every room, every drawer, every quiet corner suddenly charged with new meaning. A treasure hunt, except the treasure wasn't gold or a letter of inheritance. It was something he believed I needed more than anything material. I walked slowly down the hallway, the floorboards creaking under my feet in their familiar rhythm. The old house always made noise, but tonight it felt different, like each sound was nudging me forward. The first room I entered was his study. The door still smelled faintly of cedar, the same scent that clung to his sweaters. I hadn't touched much in here since he passed. The room felt sacred, as if the moment I moved anything, I might erase his presence. But now, it felt like the place to start. Stacks of books lined the shelves, many of them worn at the edges from years of rereading. He was a man who believed in stories, quiet stories, patient stories. The kind that didn't ask for attention but earned it slowly. I scanned the room, searching for anything that stood out. Something new. Something placed intentionally. But everything looked exactly as I remembered. I opened drawers, flipped through notebooks filled with recipes, poems, grocery lists, mundane pieces of a life lived honestly. Nothing felt like the thing he meant. Next, I checked the small wooden box on his desk. I remembered watching him polish it when I was younger, but he never opened it in front of me. My heart pounded as I lifted the lid. Inside were only a few old photographs and a silver pen. Nothing else. Not it. I placed everything back exactly as it was. As I moved toward the living room, the house seemed to hum, like it knew I was searching for something important. The lamp beside his reading chair flickered softly, casting warm light across the room. I paused. His chair. It had always been his favorite spot, the place where he'd sit every evening with a cup of tea and a book. Sometimes he'd fall asleep there, still holding the book open, his glasses slipping down his nose. I stepped closer. The cushion looked slightly uneven, as though something was tucked beneath it. My heart picked up speed. Slowly, I lifted the cushion. There, hidden with quiet intention, was a small envelope. Yellowed. Thin. Unlabeled. My breath caught. This had to be it. I reached for it carefully, feeling the weight, or lack of weight, inside. It didn't feel like a letter. It felt like paper, folded several times, maybe something delicate. I sat in his chair, sinking into the familiar softness, the scent of old fabric and tea leaves wrapping around me. With trembling fingers, I opened the envelope. Inside was a single folded sheet, and on it, A drawing. Not just any drawing. A drawing that made every part of me go still. The paper unfolded with a soft crackle, its edges fragile with age. For a moment, I thought it might be one of his old sketches, little scenes he used to doodle during slow afternoons. But as the lines revealed themselves, my breath caught in my throat. It wasn't a landscape. It wasn't a portrait of someone from his past. It was me. A younger version of me, maybe 10 or 11, sitting on the porch steps of this very house. My knees pulled to my chest. My face half hidden behind my arms. But even through the rough pencil strokes, the emotion was unmistakable. Sadness. Loneliness. A quiet ache I thought I had hidden all those years ago. I stared at it, stunned. I didn't even remember that moment clearly. Only that childhood had been hard sometimes. Too many days feeling out of place, confused by things I couldn't explain, waiting for someone to notice without me having to say the words out loud. But someone had noticed. My grandfather. I traced the pencil lines gently with my fingertip, feeling a strange warmth in my chest. He must have drawn this in secret, quietly observing me, then capturing a moment I didn't even know he'd seen. Beneath the drawing, in small, careful handwriting, he'd written, "You felt alone, even when you weren't." I carried that with me. The words blurred slightly as my eyes filled. He had seen me. Really seen me. All the moments I thought I was invisible, he had been watching quietly, understanding more than I ever gave him credit for. There was another sentence beneath it. I didn't know how to help then. But I'm trying now. A shaky breath left my chest. Even after he was gone, he was still trying. I held the drawing against me for a moment, letting the weight of his effort settle into my bones. He hadn't left money. He hadn't left instructions or demands. He had left truth. He had left a mirror to a version of me I'd forgotten. He had left proof that I mattered to him in ways he never said out loud. I unfolded the paper fully, hoping for more. And near the bottom, almost hidden in the fold, was one final line written with a trembling hand. "Look where the light ends." I frowned slightly. Look where the light ends? Was it a clue? A metaphor? Another place in the house? My eyes drifted toward the far wall, where the last bit of evening sunlight pooled faintly along the floorboards, fading slowly as night settled in. Something about the phrase tugged at me, mysterious, gentle, purposeful. If he left the drawing with that message, it meant the search wasn't over. There was more. Maybe much more. And now, I had to follow the light. I stood slowly, the drawing still held carefully in my hand. Look where the light ends. The phrase played over and over in my mind, gentle but urging. I turned toward the living room window where the last thread of daylight slipped across the floor, thinning as the sun disappeared behind the trees. The light stretched across the room in a soft golden stripe, and ended near the far wall by the bookshelf. A place I rarely bothered with. I walked toward it, each step feeling strangely purposeful, as if he were guiding me from somewhere I couldn't see. The bookshelf was tall, filled with his favorite novels, old, well-loved, and arranged in no particular order. Most of them I'd never touched. But the light stopped at the very bottom shelf. I crouched down, tracing where the brightness faded into shadow. The books here were thick and dusty, untouched for years. And then, I noticed something odd. One of the books didn't sit fully aligned with the others. Not sticking out, not pushed back, just slightly tilted. A detail easy to miss unless you were looking for it exactly. My heart beat faster. I tugged the book gently. It didn't move. Not even a centimeter. Because it wasn't a book at all. It was a wooden block carved and painted to look like one, a false cover, blending seamlessly into the shelf. My breath caught as I pressed my fingers along the edge. The wood felt smoother than it looked, worn down by someone who had handled it many times. Someone like my grandfather. I pushed lightly. A soft click echoed behind the shelf. I froze. Then I tried again, this time pulling it outward. The block slid free with surprising ease, revealing a small hollow space hidden behind it. Inside was a small tin box. Blue. Rusty at the corners. The kind that once held candy decades ago. My fingers trembled as I lifted it out. It was light, too light for anything valuable, at least in a traditional sense. But I already knew this wasn't about value. It was about meaning. I sat on the floor, legs crossed, the box resting in my hands. For a moment, I hesitated. The weight of everything so far, the note, the drawing, the clues, felt like I was being led somewhere deeply personal. Somewhere he'd never spoken about. When I finally opened the lid, a faint scent of old paper drifted out. Inside were 3 items. A small key. A folded slip of paper. And a watch, his watch, the one he wore every single day of his life. I touched the watch first, the metal warm from the tin. I remembered how he would check it constantly, even when it had stopped working years ago. He said it kept him grounded. But why leave it for me? I looked at the slip of paper, hands shaking slightly, and unfolded it. Just 4 words. For the room upstairs. The key gleamed softly under the fading light. The room upstairs. The one that had been locked my whole life. The room he never let anyone enter. And suddenly, the air around me felt charged. Because now, I had the key. The key felt cold in my palm, unexpectedly heavy for its size. I turned it over between my fingers, studying its worn edges, the way the metal had dulled with age. My grandfather must have held it countless times. Maybe hesitating. Maybe deciding when, or if, he would ever pass it on. And now it was mine. The house felt different as I stood up. Not eerie. Not haunted. But watchful, like the walls themselves understood that I had finally reached the part of his story he could never bring himself to explain aloud. I made my way to the staircase, the old steps creaking under my weight. I'd climbed them 1,000 times, but tonight each step felt like crossing a threshold into a deeper part of him, and maybe of myself. At the top of the stairs was the door. The one door he'd always kept locked. The one he brushed off with vague excuses. It's just storage. Nothing worth seeing. Old things. Dusty things. But there was always something in his tone. Something soft, something protective. And now I understood why. I stood in front of it, heart thudding steadily. The door's white paint had faded into a soft cream, chipped in places, the doorknob old but still polished, as if he cleaned it without ever turning it. I took a slow breath and slid the key into the lock. It fit perfectly. Almost too perfectly, like it had been waiting for this moment. I turned it. A quiet click echoed down the hallway. For a long moment, I just held the doorknob, grounding myself. Then, slowly, I pushed the door open. A soft sigh of air drifted out, carrying the faint scent of cedar and something else, paper, maybe. Memories. The room was dim, lit only by the small window near the ceiling. Dust floated gently in the pale beam of moonlight. And inside. It wasn't cluttered. It wasn't storage. It wasn't forgotten at all. It was a sanctuary. A small table sat in the center, covered with sketches, dozens of them. Drawings of landscapes, people, objects. But the ones that caught my breath were the portraits. Of me. Ages 5, 9, 12. Laughing, crying, lost, hopeful. He had drawn my entire childhood. Moments I remembered. Moments I didn't. Moments I didn't even know he'd seen. On the far wall was a corkboard filled with newspaper clippings, ticket stubs, school photos, pieces of me he'd quietly collected over the years. Little milestones he never missed, even when he pretended to. But on the table, at the very center, was something else. A leather-bound journal. carefully placed. Waiting. My name was written on the cover. Not printed. Not scribbled. Written in his steady, familiar hand. My knees went weak. He hadn't just left me notes. He had left me a history, a silent record of every time he watched me struggle, grow, fall, rise. And somehow, without opening the journal, I already knew. This room wasn't about secrets. It was about love he didn't know how to express while he was alive. The kind of love that hides in small things. Quiet things. Things that last. I stepped inside. And the door gently closed behind me. My hands hovered above the journal for a long moment, afraid to touch it, afraid that opening it would make everything too real, too heavy, too much. The leather cover was soft and worn, the edges faintly frayed. He must have held it often, turning it over in his hands while deciding what to write. Finally, I laid my palm on top of it. It felt warm. Like the imprint of his presence still clung to it, waiting for me. I sat at the small wooden table, the chair creaking beneath my weight, and opened the journal gently. The first page was blank. The second too. Then, in the middle of the third page, in his familiar handwriting, a single sentence. I never learned how to say things aloud, so I wrote them here instead. My chest tightened. I turned the page. A letter began, not dated, but written in the careful, deliberate way he used when something mattered to him. You were not an easy child to understand, but you were easy to love. I pressed a hand to my mouth. I wasn't sure whether to breathe or cry or both. He continued. You felt deeply. More than you let on. You carried silence like it was armor, and I didn't know how to reach you through it. I remembered those years, how emotions always felt too big, how I hid them because I didn't want to be a burden. I thought I'd masked it well. But he had seen every crack. So I watched. I listened. I saved the pieces you dropped without noticing. The corkboard behind me suddenly made perfect sense. The sketches. The clippings. The quiet evidence of a love that worked behind the scenes. I turned another page. A small sketch filled the top corner, me sitting at the kitchen table at age 11, chin in my hands, staring out the window. I didn't remember that moment, but he did. Below it, he'd written. You looked like you were searching for something you couldn't name. My throat tightened. He kept writing page after page, about moments I'd forgotten, moments I'd misunderstood, moments where he'd tried to help in small, imperfect ways. Then I reached a page where the handwriting trembled more than usual. I did not tell you enough that you made my life brighter. I feared saying the wrong thing, so too often, I said nothing. A tear slipped down my cheek. Because I had always wondered. Wondered if he was proud. Wondered if I mattered to him as much as he mattered to me. Now I knew. At the bottom of the page was one final line, written as if he had paused many times while writing it. If you found this room, then you were ready to hear me. I closed the journal gently, holding it to my chest. Because for the first time since he passed, the silence didn't feel empty. It felt full of him, of everything he couldn't say, of a love that didn't disappear with him. And that love had led me here. To this room. To this journal. To a truth I wasn't ready for before now. A truth he somehow knew I would need. I wiped my eyes with the back of my sleeve, the journal still resting gently against my chest. The room felt warmer now, alive in a way it hadn't moments earlier, as though my grandfather's presence lingered between the walls, watching me finally uncover what he had carried all these years. But something still didn't feel finished. My gaze drifted around the room again. The sketches. The clippings. The carefully organized desk. Every detail seemed intentional, except one. In the far corner, beneath the small window, the floorboards were a slightly different shade. Subtle. Almost unnoticeable unless you were searching for something out of place. And now I was. I walked over slowly, the wooden planks creaking softly beneath my feet. When I knelt down and pressed a hand against the lighter boards, they shifted, just a little. Not loose. Not broken. Liftable. My heart gave a small leap. With careful fingers, I pried at the edge until the board raised just enough for me to pull it free. Dust swirled upward in the faint moonlight. Underneath was a small fabric-wrapped bundle tied with twine. Not a box. Not a tin. Something softer. My pulse thudded as I lifted it out. The bundle was surprisingly light, and when I untied the twine, the fabric fell away to reveal a stack of letters. Dozens of them. All addressed to me. Some written years ago, the dates scribbled in handwriting that grew shakier over time. Some sealed. Some open. Some smudged with fingerprints that weren't mine. My breath caught as I picked up the first one, dated the year I turned 13, the year I pulled away from everyone, even him. I unfolded it carefully. You seemed so far away today. I wanted to ask why, but you looked like you'd disappear if I said the wrong thing. A lump formed in my throat. Another letter. I'm proud of you. I should say that out loud more. Then another, written during a time I remembered being angry at the world. I hope you know I see your strength. Even on the days you don't. I pressed the letters against my chest, overcome by the years of unsent words, years he must have spent writing what he never had the courage to speak. This wasn't just a hidden room. It was a record of everything he wished he'd told me. A soft breeze drifted through the small window, lifting the edges of the remaining letters. One envelope, slightly thicker than the rest, slid forward. It had no date. Only one line on the front, written in uneven ink. When you're older, read this one last. A chill ran through me, not of fear, but anticipation. This was the heart of everything. The final piece he'd saved for who he hoped I would become. My hands trembled as I held it gently, the weight of years pressing through the paper. But I didn't open it yet. Not until I was ready. And maybe, that time was coming faster than I expected. I held the thick envelope gently, feeling the weight of the words it contained long before I even opened it. The rest of the room seemed to fade around me, the sketches, the journal, the hidden letters beneath the floorboards, all of it quieted in anticipation. This was different. I could feel it. The way he had saved this, waited for me to be ready. It was personal, intentional, sacred. I carefully unfolded the paper inside. The handwriting was unmistakable, deliberate, slow, full of care. If you're reading this, my child, it means you've grown into someone I hoped you would become, someone who notices the quiet, who sees the invisible, who carries the weight of the world without letting it crush your spirit. I could not always be there to guide you, but I have watched over you in the ways I knew how. And now I leave this to you. The words trembled slightly on the page. I could almost hear his voice, the soft cadence, the pauses where he seemed to struggle to choose the right words, the ones he never got to speak aloud. My throat tightened as I read on. This life is fleeting, fragile, and sometimes unfair. You will face moments where nothing makes sense, where despair seems louder than hope. Remember what I tried to teach you silently: stillness holds power. Love quietly. See those who need it, even if they cannot ask. And above all, do not forget that you are never truly alone. I am part of you, and my love will always follow you, even when you cannot see it. I swallowed hard. Tears stung my eyes. Beneath the final paragraph, a smaller line was written. Now, go live. Carry these words like a compass. And one day, if you feel ready, you may leave your own quiet messages for those who come after you. I pressed the letter to my chest, feeling his presence, his guidance, his love, in a way I had never fully understood before. For the first time in years, I felt connected, anchored, not just to him, but to the part of myself I had lost along the way. And I knew, in that moment, that I would never see this house the same way again. Every painting, every floorboard, every quiet corner, held his care, his attention, his story. I folded the letter gently, placing it back in the envelope, knowing it would remain my secret treasure. A soft smile curved my lips. The emptiness I had carried for so long had begun to lift. I was no longer wandering through a house of memories. I was stepping into a life illuminated by them. And in that light, I finally felt at home. I sat in the quiet room long after the letters and journal were closed. The moonlight spilled through the window, painting the floor in silver streaks. Every sketch, every note, every hidden message whispered a truth I hadn't fully grasped until now. My grandfather's love was patient, quiet, and unwavering, even when he couldn't express it in words I could hear. I held the drawing of my younger self against my chest, thinking of all the times I had felt invisible, lost, or unworthy. And yet, here it was, proof that someone had noticed me. That someone had understood me. That someone had loved me deeply, even in silence. The room no longer felt like a place of secrets. It was a sanctuary. A testament to a bond that transcended spoken language. Every corner, every detail, every careful placement of objects carried intention. And I realized that his messages were not only meant to comfort me, they were meant to teach me. I could feel it in my bones. I had to carry this forward. Not just the lessons. Not just the love. But the act itself, the quiet attentiveness, the patient care, the choice to notice someone, to leave them a guide when words fail. That was the true inheritance. I placed the journal back on the table, arranging it carefully as he had done with everything else. The letters beneath the floorboards remained folded and safe. The drawing leaned against the wall, catching the moonlight like a tiny beacon. And I understood finally, I wasn't just the recipient of his life's quiet love. I was its continuation. Somewhere in the future, I might leave messages too, notes tucked behind paintings, letters for the lost, reminders for the unseen. Maybe not all would understand them. Maybe not all would notice. But someone would. And that would be enough. I stood, brushing off the dust from my clothes, looking around the room one last time. The feeling in my chest was lighter now, steadier. The house that had once felt silent and heavy now hummed with warmth. I took a deep breath, stepping toward the door. The lock clicked behind me gently, leaving the room as it was meant to be, private, sacred, eternal. And I knew this. His words, his love, and his quiet guidance would stay with me forever. I closed the door behind me, carrying the weight of his love not as a burden, but as a compass. Every step I took felt guided, illuminated by the quiet presence he had left behind. The letters, the journal, the drawings, they weren't just memories. They were a map of how to live, with patience, attentiveness, and an understanding that the smallest gestures can hold the deepest meaning. Sitting back in the living room, I realized something profound. We often wait for people to tell us they care. But sometimes, love is found in the silence, in the little hidden pieces left behind, waiting to be discovered when the time is right. And when we find it, it can transform the way we see the world and ourselves. This journey through his quiet wisdom changed me. I'm no longer afraid of my own silence, no longer afraid to notice the unseen, to cherish the small moments, or to leave something behind that might comfort someone else one day. He taught me that even in absence, love endures. If you've stayed with me through this story, thank you. Your time matters, and so does the act of noticing life's quiet truths. If you felt moved, inspired, or simply curious, please like this video, share it with someone who might need it, and subscribe to join me for more stories of love, secrets, and gentle revelations. Your support allows these stories to reach hearts across the world. And remember, sometimes the most powerful messages are those hidden in silence, waiting for someone ready to see them.